هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دونه بل الظالمون في ضلال مبين.
Such is Allah's creation. Show me then what any others apart from Allah have created. Nay, the fact is that the wrongdoers are in manifest error.
15. Those other than the beings whom you have set up as your deities, whom you regard as makers and unmakers of your destinies, whom you have been worshipping as such persistently. 16. That is, when they do not point out in this universe any creation of anyone else than Allah, and obviously they cannot, their setting up the non-creators as associates in Godhead and bowing before them in worship and invoking them for help, is nothing but mere stupidity, because their foolish conduct cannot be explained in any other way. Unless a person has taken leave of his senses, he cannot commit the folly that he should himself admit before you that his deities are non-creators and that Allah alone is the creator, and yet insist on their being the deities. If somebody has a little of the common sense, he will inevitably think how the one who has no power to create anything, and who has no share whatever in the creation of anything in the earth and heavens, can be our deity. Why should man bow before it and adore it as a deity? Does it possess any power that it could fulfill one's needs and requirements? Even if it hears one's prayers, what could it do to answer them when it did not have any power to create anything? For, evidently, afflictions can be removed only by him who can create something and not by him who can create nothing.
وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ.
We bestowed wisdom upon Luqman, enjoining, give thanks to Allah. Whoso gives thanks to Allah does so to his own good, and whoso disbelieves, let him know that Allah is all-sufficient, immensely praiseworthy.
17. After presenting a rational argument to refute shirk, the Arabs are being told that this rational point of view is not being presented before them for the first time, but the wise and learned people before them also have been saying the same thing, including their own famous sage, Luqman. Therefore, they cannot refute the Prophet's, peace be upon him, message, saying, if shirk was an irrational creed, why didn't it strike so to somebody else before? Luqman was well known as a wise and learned man in Arabia. He has been mentioned in the poetry of the pre-Islamic poets like Imrul Qais, Labud, Asha, Tarfa and others. Some educated Arabs also possessed a collection of the wise sayings of Luqman. According to traditions, 3 years before the Hijrah, the very first person of Al-Madinah to be influenced by the Prophet, peace be upon him, was Suwaid bin Samit. He went to Mecca for Hajj. There the Prophet, peace be upon him, was as usual preaching Islam to the pilgrims coming from different places, at their residences. When Suwaid heard his speech, he submitted, I have also gotten a thing similar to what you preach. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked what it was, he said, the role of Luqman. Then on the Prophet's, peace be upon him, insisting, he read out a portion of it, whereupon the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, this discourse is fine, but that which I have is better still. Then he recited the Quran to him, and Suwaid admitted that that was certainly better than the wisdom of Luqman. According to the historians, this person, Suwaid bin Samit, was known by the title of Camel, Perfect, in Al-Madinah on account of his ability, bravery, nobility and poetry. But after his meeting with the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he returned to Al-Madinah, he was killed in the Battle of Bat, which was fought some time afterwards. His tribesmen were of the opinion that he had become a Muslim after his meeting with the Prophet, peace be upon him. Historically, Luqman is a disputed personage. In the dark centuries of ignorance there was no compiled history. The only source of information were the traditions that were being handed down since centuries. According to these, some people thought that Luqman belonged to the people of Ad and was a king of Yemen. Relying on these traditions, Maulana Sayyid Suleiman Nadwi has expressed the opinion in the Ard al-Qaran that Luqman was a descendant of the believers who remained safe with the prophethood, peace be upon him, after the destruction of the people of Ard by a divine torment, and he was one of the kings of Yemen when it was ruled by the Ard. But other traditions which have been reported from some learned companions and their immediate followers do not support this view. Ibn Abbas says Luqman was a Negro slave, and the same is the opinion of Abu Huraira, Mujahid, Ikrimah and Khalid Arabi. According to Jabir bin Abdullah Ansari, he belonged to Nirb. Said bin al-Musayib says that he was an Egyptian Negro. These three sayings closely resemble one another. The Arabs generally called the black people Negroes, Habashish, in those days, and Nirb is the country south of Egypt and north of Sudan. Therefore, calling the same person an Egyptian and a Nubian and a Negro, in spite of the difference in words, is one and the same thing. Then the elucidations made by Suhaili in Rod al-Anuf and D. Masoudi in Muruj ad-Dhahab also throw some light on the question as to how the wisdom of this Sudanese slave spread in Arabia. They both agree that this person, though originally a Nubian, was an inhabitant of Madyam and Ayla, modern Aqaba. That is why he spoke Arabic and his wisdom spread in Arabia. Besides, Suhaili also elucidates that Luqman the sage and Luqman bin Ard were two different persons, and it is not correct to regard them as one and the same man. Another thing may also be made clear here. The Arabic manuscript from the Library of Paris, which the Orientalist Derenberg has published under the title Amthal Luqman Hakim, Fables the Luqman le Sage, is a fabricated thing which has nothing to do with the role of Luqman. These fables were compiled by somebody in the 13th century AD. Its Arabic is poor, and a perusal shows that it is, in fact, a translation of some other book in a different language, which the author or translator has himself ascribed to Luqman the sage. The Orientalists make such researches with a special object in view. They bang out such forged and fake things in order to prove that the narratives of the Quran are unhistorical legends and therefore unreliable. Anyone who reads B. Hell's article on Luqman in the Encyclopedia of Islam will not fail to understand the real motive of these people. 18. That is, the very first demand of the wisdom and knowledge, insight and sagacity, granted by Allah was that man should have adopted the attitude of gratefulness and obedience before his Lord, and not of ingratitude and thanklessness. And this gratefulness should not have merely been lip service but expressed and translated in thought and word and deed. One should have the conviction in the depths of his heart and mind that whatever he has gotten, has been given by God. One's tongue should always be acknowledging the favors of God, and also practically, one should be trying to prove by carrying out his commands, by avoiding sins, by striving to achieve his goodwill, by conveying his blessings and favors to his servants and by fighting those who have rebelled against him that he is really a grateful servant of his God. 19. That is, the one who is ungrateful and unbelieving, his unbelief is harmful to his own self. Allah does not lose anything. He is independent and does not stand in need of anyone's gratitude. The gratitude of someone does not add anything to his Godhead, nor does anyone's ingratitude and disbelief change the reality that whatever the servants have gotten, has been granted by him. He is self-praiseworthy whether someone praises him or not. Every particle in the universe bears testimony to his perfection and beauty, his creativity and providence, and every creature is paying homage to his glory perpetually.
وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ.
And call to mind when Luqman said to his son while exhorting him, "My son, do not associate others with Allah in His divinity. Surely, associating others with Allah in His divinity is a mighty wrong."
20. This particular admonition from the wisdom of Luqman has been cited here for two reasons. 1. He gave this admonition to his son, and obviously, no one can be insincere to his own children. A person may deceive others, may behave hypocritically towards them, but no one, not even a most depraved person, will try to deceive and defraud his own children. Therefore, Luqman's admonishing his son thus is a clear proof of the fact that in his sight shirk was indeed the most heinous sin, and for that very reason he first admonished his dear son to refrain from this iniquity. 2. The second reason for this narration is that many parents from among the disbelievers of Makkah were compelling their children to turn away from the message of Tawheed being preached by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and remain steadfast on the creed of shirk, as is being stated in the following verses. Therefore, those foolish people are being told, as if to say, the well-known sage of your own land had wished his children well by admonishing them to avoid shirk. Now you should judge it for yourself whether you are wishing your children well or ill when you compel them to follow the same creed of shirk. 21. Zulm means to deprive someone of his right and to act unjustly. Shirk is a grave iniquity because man sets up such beings as equals with his creator and provider and benefactor as have no share whatever in creating him, nor in providing for him, nor in bestowing the blessings on him, which he is enjoying in the world. There could be no greater injustice than this. The Creator's right on man is that he should worship him alone, but he worships others and so deprives him of his right. Then, in whatever he does in connection with the worship of others than Allah, he exploits many things, from his own mind and body to the earth and heavens, whereas, all these things have been created by Allah, the One, and man has no right to use any of them in the worship of any other than Allah. Then, the right of man's own self on him is that he should not debase and involve it in punishment. But when he worships others than his creator, he debases his self as well as makes it deserving of the punishment. Thus, the entire life of a mushrik becomes zulm in every aspect and at all times, and his every breath becomes an expression of injustice and iniquity.
وصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير.
We enjoined upon man to be dutiful to his parents. His mother bore him in weakness upon weakness, and his weaning lasted 2 years. We, therefore, enjoined upon him, give thanks to me and to your parents. To me is your ultimate return.
23. From these words, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad, Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad have drawn the conclusion that the suckling period of the child is 2 years. If a child has been suckled by a woman within this period, they will be forbidden for each other for marriage, but if outside and beyond this period, they will not be so. A saying of Imam Malik also supports this. But Imam Abu Hanifa has proposed the period of 2.5 years as a precaution, and has added that the child has been weaned after 2 years, or even earlier, and it is no longer dependent upon suckling for its food. No woman would be forbidden for him, if she gave him suck after that period. However, if the real food of the child is still milk, suckling during the period will render him and her forbidden for each other in spite of his eating the other food in a more or less quantity. For, the verse does not mean that the child should be suckled necessarily for 2 years. In Surah Al-Baqarah it has been said, the mothers shall suckle their children for 2 whole years, if the fathers desire the suckling to be completed. Ayat 233. Ibn Abbas from these words has concluded, and other scholars have agreed with him in this, that the shortest period of pregnancy is 6 months, for the Quran at another place says, his bearing, in the womb, and his weaning took 30 months. Surah Al-Ahqaf, Ayat 15. 24. That is, about whom you have no knowledge that he is my associate.
Return.
وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَأُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ.
But if they press you to associate others with me in my divinity, to associate those regarding whom you have no knowledge that they are my associates, do not obey them, and yet treat them well in this world, and follow the way of him who turns to me in devotion. Eventually, it is to me that all of you shall return, and I shall then tell you all that you did.
25 All of you, the children as well as the parents. 26. For explanation, see, ends 11 and 12 of Surah Al-Ankabut. 27. The other admonitions of Luqman are being narrated here to imply that like the basic beliefs, the teachings pertaining to morals that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is presenting, are not anything new in Arabia.
That they are my associates, do not obey them. Those regarding whom you have no knowledge, that is, no knowledge about their being God's associates in his divinity.
يا بني إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأت بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير.
Luqman said, Son, Allah will bring forth everything, even if it be as small as the grain of a mustard seed, even though it be hidden inside a rock or anywhere in the heavens or earth. Allah is most subtle, all aware.
28. That is, nothing can escape Allah's knowledge and his grasp. A seed in the rock may be hidden for you, but it is known to Allah. A particle in the heavens may be very distant for you, but for Allah it is very near. A thing lying in the layers of the earth may be lying in darkness for you, but for him it is in full light. Therefore, you cannot do anything good or bad, anywhere or any time, which may remain hidden from Allah. He is not only aware of it, but when the time for accountability comes, he will place before you a full record of each act of yours. 29. In this there is a subtle allusion to this, that whoever will enjoin good and forbid evil, will inevitably have to face and undergo afflictions and hardships in the world.
يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور.
Son, establish prayer, enjoin all that is good and forbid all that is evil, and endure with patience whatever affliction befalls you. Surely, these have been emphatically enjoined.
30. Another meaning can be, these are things which require courage and resolution. To rise for the reformation of the people and to brave the hardships of the way cannot be the job of a mean-spirited and cowardly person. 31. Tasair in the original is from seer, a disease in the camel's neck clue to which it keeps its face turned to one side. The idiom implies the attitude of a person who shows arrogance and vanity, turns his face away and treats others with scant respect.
ولا تصعر خدك للناس ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور.
Do not contemptuously turn your face away from people, nor tread haughtily upon earth. Allah does not love the arrogant and the vainglorious.
32. Muqtal in the original implies a person who has a very high opinion of himself, and fakhar is the one who boasts of his superiority over others. A man becomes haughty and arrogant and vain in his gait only when he is puffed up with pride, and wants that others should feel his superiority. 33. According to some commentators it means this: walk neither fast nor slow but at a moderate pace, but the context shows that here the pace or the rate of walking is not the question. There is nothing morally wrong with a fast or a slow pace in itself, nor can there be a rule made for it. When a man is in a hurry, he has to walk fast, and there is nothing wrong if one walks slow when walking for pleasure. Even if there is a standard for the moderate pace, it cannot be made a law for every person at all times. What is actually meant by this is to reform the state of the self under which a person walks haughtily. The haughtiness and arrogance of a person inevitably manifests itself in his gait and style of walking, which shows the state of his mind and also the cause of his pride and haughtiness. Wealth, authority, beauty, knowledge, power and such other things cause a man to become proud and vain, and each of these gives him a special style of gait. Contrary to this, manifestation of humility in the gait is also the result of one or the other morbid mental state. Sometimes the hidden conceit of the self of a man takes on the form of ostentatious humility, piety and godlines, and this is shown by his gait, and sometimes man really feels so embittered by the frustrations of the world that he adopts a sick man's gait. What Luqman meant to say is this: avoid these states of the mind and self and walk the gait of a simple, honest and noble person, which neither shows any vanity and haughtiness nor weakness nor ostentatious piety and humility. The taste of the prophets, peace be upon him, great companions in this regard can be judged from a few instances. When Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, once saw a man walking with his head hung down, he shouted out to him, saying, "Walk with your head raised up. Islam is not sick." He saw another person walking like a weak, sick man, and said, "Wretch, do not sully our religion." Both these incidents show that in the sight of Umar religious piety did not at all require that one should walk cautiously, like the sick man, and show undue humility by one's gait. Whenever he saw a Muslim walking such a gait, he would have the apprehension that it would misrepresent Islam and would depress the other Muslims. A similar incident was once met with by Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. She saw a person walking as if run down and exhausted. She asked what was the matter with him. It was said, he is one of the reciters of the Quran, i.e., a person who remains engaged in reciting and teaching the Quran and in worship. At this she said, Umar was the chief of the reciters of the Quran, but as it was he would walk with a firm foot, and he would speak with force and strength, and he would give a good beating if he had to. CEN 43 of Surah Bani Israel, and EN 79 of Surah Al-Furqan.